So thank you very much for inviting me. Where's Rupa? This book, there's 100 books outside, which are Rupa's gift to you. This is the book. With this genius painting by Paolo Troilo. This is Adam falling from the ceiling of Sister Chapel. And you will see that his soul is going away and his heart is bursting into a bloom. And Rupa, without you, this would never have happened. Rupa has been supporting this book's appearance for 5 years, and which was enormously important. So thank you very much for having me here. Lalita, thank you for inviting me. I arrived with Jehan Nujam over there, who is the first woman to receive a TED Prize, the first Arab woman to be nominated for an Oscar, and my 18-year-old son over there, to whom the book is dedicated. So, but I'm a scientist, yeah. So this is not an activist book; it's a science book, yes. Which I think is important that we try to put a framing around this. So I thought I would start with sort of telling you a little bit of what this is. So when I was in 1979, when I was 9, my mom told me that what you do when you arrive at a door at the same time as a woman, I was 9, you let the woman get through. And a year later she added that except if you're entering a public space, because you go first, because you protect her. A single mother in Budapest, Central Europe. At the same time, in Sweden, which was always been the forefront of gender equality, almost the same rule existed without the second part. And the New Guinea Highlands, this rule didn't exist. Today in Hungary, the rules are all over the place. In Oxford, where I live, I could get into trouble by letting a woman go through, because that would be a sign of my patriarchal nature. And New Guinea is more like the Swedish version 40 years ago. So in other words, gender rules exist in all cultures. They vary across cultures, and they change in time. In this case was a very innocent rule, maybe. Of course, many other cases, the rules are not that innocent. But the point is that it's a great scientific question. Yeah? There's a phenomenon. Gendered rules exist. Every culture has rules for women different to rules for men. These rules vary across cultures and change in time. So what this book is sort of my science's 9 years work. My science's answer, framing why this exists, why there are gendered rules, why they vary. And what we find is that actually our species is we're super flexible. Yeah, we can do patriarchy, we can do matriarchy, we can do gender equality, but these rules are not random. Institutions matter, traditions matter, culture matter, they change, but they are not random. So in a multiple life length time horizon, some kind of ecological framing together with our society's technologies will drive the long-term social organization that we have. So we used to be gender equal as foragers. Then as farmers we became patriarchal. And now we are in a very slow process away from patriarchy again. So this is the book. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for getting this book for everybody. So if you'd like to have a book, it's out there. And I think now we're having a fireside chat.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm going to now invite a young person, a future voice of the Commonwealth, Rupert Dash's daughter, Aayati Dash-Kar, who runs youth projects for the foundation, to ask a few questions to Thomas from a young girl's perspective. So over to you.
So hi everyone. Hi. So I'm a student, I'm a self-taught artist, and today we're all here redefining his and her story, rethinking about our past and redefining our present, right? So we have the challenge of social norms, and that's the theme today. And his story is inspired by her story, and that is history for me. But do we know this story well enough? Do we understand this story? And do we even care if this story is permanent or temporary? But compared to the timeline of this earth, we have been here for a very short amount of time. And is this time enough to tell a story? But still, this story is crucial for young people, and it challenges deeply ingrained gender norms that have shaped societies for centuries. And young people have the power to really challenge those outdated ideas. And today's discussion will inspire that change. And I'm honored to be on this, to moderate this fireside chat today. So you talked about cultures, and you talked about how labor-based division, foragers, hunters, farmers. So to what extent does the labor-based division of labor based on gender imply male dominance, and how does it impact our society?
Right, thank you for that. I mean, I think this was the biggest surprise that I had in this book. Because I thought that gender-based division of labor is some quality of patriarchies. It turns out this is, sometimes it's true, but most of the time it's not true. So most foragers, most hunter-gatherer forager cultures are gender equal. There are a few exceptions, but most of them are gender equal. And every one of them has gender-based division of labor, actually following two different logics at the same time. And every matriarchy-leaning society has women's jobs and men's jobs, and there's only one full matriarchy, the Mosul culture in the Himalayan China, and they have gender-based division of labor. So what we find is that in forager cultures today, and as far as we can tell in our ancestry, because we were foragers for at least 300,000 years before farming appeared, gendered-based tasks were how our ancestors existed. And then farming appeared probably 11 different times, at least 11 different times on the planet at the same time due to a climate event. And then every one of them switched to patriarchy. Almost the Mosul culture is one example where it's an exception, but almost every one of them switched to patriarchal systems. And every one of them had gender-based division of labor, but now it was part of the patriarchal setup.
So when I think about matriarchy and patriarchy and hierarchy, when I read your book, it was all about chimpanzees and bonobos, right? And so I want to know, how do observations of bonobos and chimpanzees shed light on the origins of male dominance in our society today? Right.
So we are apes. We're mammals. We're animals, mammals, and primates and apes. And as thus, we are one of three closely related species: bonobos, chimpanzees, and humans. They are our closest relatives, and we are their closest relative. Chimpanzees, so these species used to be one species living in the Congo, and when the Congo River emerged around 2 million years ago, that separated the populations, and the northern populations became chimpanzees, patriarchal, and the southern population became the bonobos, it's matriarchal. What we learn about the way their societies shifted, actually really educating about what happened to our societies. We are different in that we do not have a very strong anchor of social organization. So we can be anything, but we probably have an anchor in gender equality. But when the ecological and technological setting pushes us in one way, we are going to, so say the intensity of fruits, there are a lot of calories around in the north of the Congo, And that probably pushed the chimpanzee species to evolve towards a patriarchal setup, because of control of the resources paid in evolution sense. And the south of the Congo, much less dense setup, and that they pushed towards more a matriarchal, gender harmonious, but with a female lead setup. And that's exactly what we see what happened when, with farming, the resources changed. And then, so all of these gender equal or gender harmonious societies shifted towards patriarchal setup. And now this changed again, so we are very, very slowly moving away from it again.
So how do these our relatives and these behaviors, these related behaviors, affect our societal beliefs today?
Right. When I was looking for, in the book I needed a definition for patriarchy. It was very, very difficult because these terms are fraught today with our discussion around this. I realized there's one trick. I can define patriarchy as chimpanzee-like. And it's extremely useful because chimpanzee societies are almost like a caricature of patriarchal setup. So if you compare our societies today to a chimpanzee society, we can actually learn quite a bit about ourselves and where we are in this range. So chimpanzee societies are super hierarchical. Status is very important. A lot of aggression inside the group, a lot of aggression among the groups. And this is exactly what we see in human patriarchal societies. Property is important, very steep hierarchy, a lot of aggression that maintains the hierarchy, and wars among the groups. Bonobos are very different. There's a bit of hierarchy, but much less steep. There is a lot of female leadership. They don't have the conflicts are usually not solved via aggression, and when the groups meet, they don't have war. They don't have aggression. Basically, they play with each other and have sex with each other. That's what the bonobo group encounters are. Chimpanzees kill each other on sight right away. Very different setup.
So, how, as a young girl's perspective, how do young people have the power to reshape these norms in our society today by questioning these practices, promoting equality in our communities, and how do you think young people can make sure that these rules for men and women are fair for everyone?
Amazing question. We have an ability, our species, unlike bonobos and chimpanzees, our species has the ability to think about this question. So in the past, when the ecosystem changed or our technologies changed, our societies changed really slowly through many life lengths. But today we are again in a shift, but rather than letting it just happen and going slowly through a set of random steps that ends up in a new kind of society, we can understand the process and we can jump over maybe at least some of the transition process. And transition is so painful because there's a mismatch between the underlying logic and the way our current societies work, together with the cultures and the institutions and power structures. So, in a word, please read the book. I know, I use it. All the young people should read the book.
Yeah. So, and you talk about these differences, and over time societies have interpreted these differences in various ways, reinforcing them through laws, education, and even societal norms. However, you argue that these differences, or how societies have interpreted them, no longer play a role in society today. They were only functional in ancient societies. So why do people think that boys should act one way and girls another way?
Right. So in a traditional society, the economic activity is inside the group. So it makes sense. One of the logics that drives boys and girls, women and men jobs is an ecological logic. The other one is within family division of labor logic. So it makes sense to be specialized in something that will make you a good match in a couple. So if you need to learn how to make a bow and arrow, or how to make fire, or how to make clothes, it makes time to learn these, and it makes sense to teach. So this is one of the logics of division of labor. But today, if I need a new shirt, I go into the shop and buy one. If I want to fish, I don't need to make rope and make a net. I go to the shop again and buy it. And so right now we do not need anymore any of these special skills. And in the economy, the ecological logic changed entirely. And as the ecological logic changed, we also do not need to have these specializations. So the need to be successful in life is nothing to do with the gender-based division of labor. So the logic is going away, but it's a very slow process because our cultures respond and adjust very slowly.
And I want to also ask about how you talk about Cleopatra and
Yes.
her why she was not able to maintain that position, and you talk about how she used her beauty as part of her arsenal. Can you talk about that?
It was more about how she, I don't think you say beauty, but she disregarded the institution of marriage for a long time. Because she was making alliances. She was making alliances without formal marriage. And at one point, much later in life, formal marriage was important for her. And then formal marriage became important for her. That was probably a political mistake. And this was probably part of the way, maybe the main reason she fell from power. So formal marriage is something that all patriarchal systems invented. So patriarchy was emerged at least 11 different times on different parts of the planet, independent from each other. Every one of them invented formal marriage. Formal marriage doesn't exist in hunter-gatherer societies. Kinship exists, but formal marriage doesn't. And the one matriarchy Mosor, they don't have formal marriage. So it's like formal marriage is a very typical patriarchal invention of basically social network regulation. And that's where, so I was talking about Cleopatra because of via this.
Yeah. So also going back to young girls, you talk about stigmatization around menstruation, going back from the last panel, how there's stigmatization around menstruation for girls and the lack of access to menstrual products, sanitation, which creates period poverty, which disproportionately affects girls and women around the world, limiting their opportunities. And this cultural stigma often aggravates the issue even more. So can you talk about that?
Right. So all patriarchal narrative systems and regulation affects or has regulation, strong regulation about the period. But it turns out that actually a lot of it is not what the narratives or sometimes supernatural narratives say, is more the behavior of observation and control of sexuality. So a week after the period comes in, maybe 9 days after, the woman body can conceive. Yeah, so woman can conceive. Yeah, so if you want to control, if a patriarchal system wants to control how and with whom a woman conceives, so control of sexuality, which every patriarchal system invented, and is much tighter control for women than for men. One way to do that is to observe women when they have a period. It's a basic biological process, and then have supernatural narratives about all kind of how it's unhealthy or not sacred. Traditions vary, but all of them have the same insight. This was actually a result by Beverly Strassman, who works in a village in Malawi for 3.5 decades, and she observed that there are three different Abrahamic traditions, different from each other, and sort of like an original African tradition in this village. All of them are present, and they all have different traditions, different practices, different supernatural narratives, but they are basically identical in the way the regulation is around observation and control around the period.
So talking about the period and talking about how we all are part, how young girls go through that process, I want to tell a personal story where girls in my school started bullying me. Apparently I had my period, which was not true. And because of that stigmatization, I refused to go to school. So many girls around the world refuse to go to school because of the stigmatization around the period, saying, because I was at that point once, that I said, no, I can't go to school. I went through such a shameful thing. And I think that experience was really shaped me for who I am today. And I want to touch on one last point, the Industrial Revolution, which brought about significant societal changes, including shifts in gender roles and disparities. And as industrialization has progressed, it has shown that men are supposed to have more powerful positions, and in that past, in the context that women have they're confined to the domestic duties of home. And this division of labor and perpetuation of gender norms and inequalities, women were often paid less than men for similar work, and their opportunities for career advancement were limited. That is why I want to ask you, how did the Industrial Revolution influence the existing gender disparity and the forthcoming AI revolution, and do you believe that will work towards narrowing this gap or potentially widening it?
Right. I mean, the Industrial Revolution was another big, giant surprise, because I thought that the Industrial Revolution contributed to the logic of patriarchy. In fact, the logic of patriarchy started to go away at the Industrial Revolution. It's just our societies didn't notice for a very long time. So when we look at, there were two logics. One of the within family logic of division of labor and foragers. The other logic is an ecological logic. So if you look at hunter-gatherer, forager-hunter-gatherer society, which is how we existed before farming, all of us, all the jobs, all the tasks that are resources that are difficult to find, difficult to access, and super dangerous. Think of hunting a whale from a boat with a wooden pole that's fighting for its life, done by men, or almost entirely men. And at the other end of the scale, the easy to find, easy to access, and relatively safe tasks tend to be done almost entirely by women. By the way, this is where most of the calories come from. And if I look at if you ask, what is the ecology of a factory job? What is the ecology of a job of somebody who's working in the office over there? That is an ape like us, works there. What is the ecological framing around this? And these are jobs that are easy to find, easy to access, and safe. So in other words, with the Industrial Revolution, the new kind of jobs emerged that are all the kinds of jobs that women would have been specialized in. And that changed the underlying logic of property, the underlying logic of gender-based division of labor. It did change the underlying logic of what a state does. But if you have 7 kids and you don't get educated, it's extremely difficult to shift into these jobs. So the solution is, it seems, that when girls and young women go through education, have access to the labor market, the number of children goes down. It's almost like one of those rare things that's almost like a low. And as a consequence, the shift in our society is like a spiral of shift that happened. And I think, so this is what happened with the Industrial Revolution. We see now very slowly, so on the global level, number of children started to go down really around the Second World War, after the Second World War. So 1960 is the first time we have species level measurement of number of kids per woman. It was 5.2. Today it's 2.5. It's gone really, really down very fast. Entirely on the back of education, access to the labor market. And as a consequence, we are shifting into a new system. And the same, so I do not know what's going to happen with the AI revolution. But what I can see is that the logic where we are moving is an even stronger logic than what the Industrial Revolution was happening. So I would imagine that if that's true, and all of this framing is correct, then we're going to go even further on where we are now. So we are going towards a new kind of society, which probably never had this, because maybe it's very similar to our archaic setup, but in a global society. So actually, there's a new term that we in the book we had. It's called matriarchy. I don't know if it's going to hold the matriarchy term, but it's the definition. So the book starts with the definition. If you have a look at it, there's a glossary, and the matriarchy is gender harmonious, gender equal society with a hint of female advantage. Think leadership bodies 55-45 ratio, which is, we know from many other studies, there's the lowest level of aggression in any group, highest level of cooperation in any group. That sort of, I think that's what's going to happen, is the AI revolution is pushing us even closer to that point.
So we're coming to a short end to this fireside chat, but we thank Dr. Tamas, David-Barrett, for sharing his valuable insights and expertise with us today. And we hope that this discussion has provided a deeper understanding of the complexities, the challenges, and the human behavior and societal structures. And let's continue to engage in this conversation. And let's give a big round of applause to Dr. Tamas.
And to you.